The White Sox and the Nationals are rebuilding, and they're taking on each other in a 3-game set this week. Let's talk about who will turn things around first, next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong White Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written content at southsideshowdown.com. Also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And hey, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Smash the like button. Also, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review. So the White Sox and the Washington Nationals were rained out last night. They will play a straight doubleheader today. Both franchises, well, they saw a contention window slam quickly shut on them. The Nationals, though, they did win a World Series, while the White Sox just won 2 playoff games in their contention window. So both are now in their rebuilds, and it's worth seeing who can get back to contention sooner. Then there are some storylines to watch out for in this series. And then finally, let's revisit that Adam Eaton trade back in the 2016-2017 offseason and see who made out as the winner. But first, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase Locked On MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Quick coffee slurp. Sorry for going off camera there for those watching on YouTube. Went with the, for those that listen to the show regularly, and I appreciate it, went with the daddy mug that my daughter painted for me in Bears colors. As you can see, I've got my Bears hoodie on today. So the Nationals had a much longer competitive window than the White Sox. From 2012 to 2019, Washington finished either first or second in the NL East. The White Sox spent that decade being mediocre and then rebuilding. And the Nationals built it up, a winning team with a franchise prospect in Bryce Harper and Steven Strasburg. They also found a generational talent in Juan Soto. And they did what the White Sox didn't do during the contention window, and that is they went out and spent money in free agency and made big trades to add quality players to put them over the top. And the end result was winning the 2019 World Series. And that was after Bryce Harper left town. And then the Nationals spent the next 4 years in last place. So what happened? Attrition happened real fast. Anthony Rendon, he bolted to the Angels after the 2019 season. They end up trading Trey Turner, Max Scherzer, Soto, and Adam Eaton, especially Soto and Turner because they weren't going to be able to re-sign them. Injuries took out Strasburg and Ryan Zimmerman and a couple more key pieces. And hey, injuries, does that sound familiar? So since the 2019 season, the Nationals have been in last place in the NL East. Now, they should obviously finish at least in fourth this year because the Marlins have already quit. And they have now taken over the title of worst team of baseball from the Chicago White Sox. And the Nationals obviously have had 4 years to get ahead of the White Sox in terms of a rebuild. But still, it's worth comparing since they play each other. Who can get back to being competitive first? So let's start with the GM and manager. The Nationals have Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez. You know, those two combined to win the World Series in 2019. And Rizzo was in charge of the Nationals last decade. Still is, obviously. The Sox have an unproven and some say unqualified first-year GM in Chris Getz. And he tried to upgrade the defense this offseason, and the defense is still terrible. And Pedro Gafal, who might be the worst manager in baseball. So, advantage, Washington. They're better led. Future payroll. So, according to Spotrac, the Nationals only have catcher Keibert Ruiz. Hopefully, I pronounced that first name correctly. He's the only one that only active player that has a guaranteed contract next season. And Steven Strasburg still technically has to be active, like an active player, even though he's retired, for them to pay the rest of his contract out. But you add those two up, that's $28 million in salary committed. That's all they have next season. Now, obviously, they still have to renew their pre-arb players and pay their arbitration eligible players, but they have a lot more flexibility to spend in free agency next season than the White Sox. Now, the Sox could get down to as little as $32 million in guaranteed deals next season, only to Andrew Benintendi and Luis Robert Jr. They have to decline Yohan Moncada's and Eloy Jimenez's options. They're going to probably trade Eric Fetty, and then they would need to decline Max Stassi, John Briba, and Martin Maldonado's options. So they both are going to have flexibility to spend money in the offseason. But Washington actually has shown a willingness to spend and spend wisely under Rizzo. So advantage, Washington. All right, superstar player or potential superstar player. Well, the Sox have Luis Robert Jr., and he should have won the AL MVP last year, or could have at least had Shohei Ohtani not played in the AL and the Sox not lost 101 games. Although he is hurt this year and has battled injuries most of his career. CJ Abrams, he's starting to emerge. He has an 858 OPS this season and an OPS plus of 148 this year. That means he is 48 points above average. It's pretty good. And I say emerging because last year in his first full season, he had a 245, 300, 412 slash line. When Robert Jr., though, is healthy, he is one of the best players in baseball. But since health is a factor, let's go a push there in terms of who you could build the team around. Farm system. So both have 4 players in MLB Pipeline's top 100. But the Nationals have 2 in the top 10, with James Wood at number 5 and Dylan Cruz at number 7. And in terms of like what's the path that their farm system can help, at least when you look at the top 10, the Nationals have more position players. They have 8 of their top 10 prospects that are position players, where the Sox strength in their system right now is their pitching. And I've discussed that many times on past shows. And it'll be interesting to see how a system built on hitting versus one built on pitching can turn out. You know, if you have good starting pitching, that gives you the chance to obviously be competitive longer, i.e., look at the Brewers last couple of years, or obviously the Oakland A's during their Moneyball days. But then on the flip side, look at how the Cubs won a World Series in 2016 with mostly position players. Look at the Orioles. They are stacked in terms of position players. And you can always use hitting to get pitching and vice versa. So it'll be interesting. And then to make sure I did not sound out of town stupid, I did reach out to Locked On Nationals host Ryan Clary. We're going to see if we can do a crossover episode. I also reached out to District on Deck, part of the Fansided Network site expert Nick Myers. And he tells me he thinks the Nationals are closer because of guys like Abrams and Wood. They also have a couple young pitchers in Jake Irvine and Mackenzie Gore to build a rotation around, where obviously the Sox will have just Garrett Crochet. Obviously, they still have some young arms too, but in terms of established major league talent, they at least have 2 established major league pitchers. He does say they need an elite arm, and they need Wood and Cruz to get there to obviously take off. But on the flip side here, the Nationals are in the NL East, and they're going to have to jump the Braves, the Phillies, and the big spending Mets. Where the Sox, hey, they play in the AL Central. And if they ever started to act like a big market team, well, they could dominate the Central for years to come. But we know they won't do that. Well, let's switch up gears and go over some storylines to watch during this series next on Locked On White Sox. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. With more than 3 million members, it is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Think of it this way: you love a player, pick more so you can back up your faith in that player. Or maybe you're not a fan of Andrew Vaughn, think he's just a replacement level player. Well, try to go with less for a chance to have some winnings and not like them at the same time. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick of more or less and add them to add to your PrizePicks entry today. PrizePicks is really simple to play, and you can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Easy, fun, simple. Sign me up. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the White Sox play a doubleheader today against the Washington Nationals. First game is at 3:40 p.m. Central. Can the White Sox take both games? Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter, and thank you for making the show your first listen. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Smash the like button. Also, follow or subscribe to the show on wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, leave a 5-star review. So the Nationals and the White Sox, they start a 3-game set today after Mother Nature spared us from watching two teams under 500 play each other. Although, again, the White Sox are playing better baseball. So it would have been nice if Mother Nature said, hey, let's get a game in. The Nationals come in losers of 3 straight series. Both teams feature offenses with team batting averages in the bottom 10 of the league. Although the Nationals, they're in the upper half in on-base percentage. So they're going to take their pitches and they're going to get on base. He gets on base. Pitching-wise, the Nationals are also in the upper half in ERA, while the White Sox are 26th. Although, again, some of that is Michael Soroka. Some of that was when Garrett Crochet got roughed up for a couple starts. Because we've seen, and some of that was Chris Flexen starts of the season. And that's the first kind of like thing to watch for, or storyline. Can Chris Flexen continue to pitch well? His last 3 starts, he has given up just 3 earned runs, and he's pitched at least into the 5th. And he was amazing against Tampa, but the Rays are no longer on the schedule. So the Sox need him to pitch well again to up that trade value. He starts game 1. So come on, Flexen, up that trade value. Because I'd like to see a package of Eric Fetty, Chris Flexen, and Michael Kopech. Package those 3 together. Let's see what we can get. Does Eric Fetty get revenge against his old team? Fetty was drafted by the Nationals, I believe, and he was so bad for the Nationals, he had to go to Korea to salvage his career. But he's back now with the White Sox, and he has been brilliant on the mound. And again, we need him to pitch well because, again, trade value. It's all about trade value. So especially with Fetty being on a team-friendly deal for next year. Yes, he's in his 30s, but you can still sell that, hey, he's on a cheap deal and he's effective. And will he show the Nationals, hey, if you just helped me tweak these things, I could have helped you. Andrew Vaughn, can he continue to hit? I talked about his hot hitting in the Guardian series. Let's see if now he's finally gotten out of his doldrums, that it was just a couple weeks slump and not a bad season. This is a big series for him. Brian Ramos, he had a rookie series where he was getting out more easily against the Guardians. Maybe now the league has adjusted to him. So let's see if he can make the adjustment to the adjustment, especially with Danny Mendick going on his rehab assignment. I wrote about it on Southside Showdown. I would like to see Ramos stay even after Mendick comes up. You can move Mendick to third. And I know I've talked about it on past shows. It can't hurt to get an extended look because Ramos showed, hey, he can hit at the major league level. But now baseball is going to come for him. Can he adjust back? And why not? It's a lost season. At the very worst, you send him back down to AAA if you want, or AA, depending on where you think he needs to go. And he works on some things. Can't hurt. Garrett Crochet, he's going to pitch game 3, so he's going to pitch tomorrow. Fetty will pitch, obviously, game 2 today of that doubleheader. Garrett Crochet, can he continue to pitch like a stud as we've seen during the first 3 starts and recently? He's going to be the anchor of the next good rotation for the White Sox. So let's see him continue to pitch well. As I said yesterday, he just needs to avoid that big second and third inning. And again, if you go into his splits, he's outstanding in the first, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Don't expect him to pitch the 7th unless his pitch count is really low. Because again, the Sox are going to rightfully treat him with kid gloves, which they should. Biggest thing, though, to watch is can the White Sox grab some wins before they enter a brutal stretch of schedule. After this series, the Sox have to go to New York to play 3 against the Yankees. Then they got to go to Toronto, where, they've never played well there for a 3-game set. Then Baltimore comes to town. Then Toronto comes in. And then the Sox have to play a 5-game road stand, 3 against Milwaukee, 2 against the Cubs at Wrigley. And then you got Boston and Seattle coming to town. So if the Sox want to just be run-of-the-mill bad, and that's really, or fun bad, because that's really all you can ask for them for this season, they need to win this series because it's going to be really tough. That's a tough stretch of schedule. I know Toronto's under 500, but they're still a talented team. And again, as I stated, the Sox do not play well in Toronto. So this might be the stretch of baseball where we say, hey, this was the best stretch of baseball for the White Sox. But if, they want to avoid that being historically bad, pick up this series win, and then, obviously see what happens. Well, talking about winning, let's talk about a famous trade the Sox and the Nationals made back in the day and see who actually won that trade next on Locked On White Sox. Life insurance, not something we like to think about and not something we think we might need. And hey, I used to think my work life insurance policy at my 9 to 5 was enough. Not true. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. And I know a couple years back, before my daughter was born, my wife and I realized, hey, we needed life insurance outside of our 9 to 5 jobs. And man, how I wish I knew about Policygenius at the time, because trying to find a policy when I was looking for life insurance was a pain. Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from licensed expert support team. And that's huge because I'm still getting calls from someone I tried to get a policy from back in the day. And Policygenius, they're not going to do that because they're going to help you compare your options from top companies, and their teams of licensed experts is on hand to help you to help talk you through the process. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. And I wish I had that when I was shopping for life insurance. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. And hey, the White Sox play a doubleheader today against the Washington Nationals. First game is at 3:40 p.m. Central. Can the Sox take both games? Catch every pitch of the White Sox hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search White Sox. And thank you for sticking with me this long through the show. Really appreciate it, especially you everydayers. We're getting through the Sox season. And again, as I've said, if you don't want to watch the White Sox games, I'll watch them and I'll tell you about it. Just make me your first listen. In the 2016-2017 offseason, the White Sox kicked off their first rebuild attempt. They traded Chris Sale to Boston. That's when they got Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech back in that deal. They also somehow got 3 good pitching prospects for Adam Eaton from the Nationals. The Nationals liked Eaton's team-friendly deal to play the outfield, so they sent Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez, and Dane Dunning to the Sox. So at that time, it looked like the Sox fleeced the Nationals, especially since Eaton was not well liked in the clubhouse. Eaton, nobody likes you, as Ozzie Guillen famously said. And his slash line in 4 seasons for Washington was 279, 365, 419. But here's the kicker. He helped Washington win the World Series. The Sox, on the other hand, well, Dane Dunning is now in Texas after he was used to acquire Lance Lynn after the 2020 season. And Lynn, he was strong in 2021, hurt in 2022, traded in 2023. And Dane Dunning, he just won a World Series with the Rangers. Now, you have to give something up to get something back. But you got to think, man, it would have been nice for the Sox to have Dane Dunning during their competitive window. Maybe it didn't get shut, and maybe they still have a decent starting pitcher. Although I think Dunning's hurt now. But the Sox sort of mitigated that when they moved Lynn to the Dodgers last year before the trade deadline. They have Nick Nastrini and Jordan Leisure. Leisure should be the future closer. Nastrini, future rotation piece. So, hey, it's the trade that keeps on giving. Lucas Giolito at one point was one of the worst pitchers in baseball, according to Stephen A. Smith. Then he became the staff ace. Then he struggled at the end of his Sox tenure, and then he was traded. And now he's not even pitching because of an injury. The Sox at least mitigated, Giolito's struggle at the end by getting their catcher of the future in Edgar Quero. Ronaldo Lopez, the Sox could just never figure him out. They tried him out as a starter. He didn't pan out. They moved him to the bullpen where he, showed his velocity in the bullpen. He was decent in the bullpen. He was then traded with Giolito to the Angels last year. He is now in Atlanta, and he's back to being a starting pitcher, and he's pitching great. Helped blank the Cubs last night. So the Sox just could never unlock Ronaldo. But when you look at that deal, the Nationals, they get a World Series. The White Sox, they got one playoff win, and that was from Lucas Giolito in the move. Lance Lynn, he was supposed to be, that veteran ace that they needed to get over the hump. And obviously they won the AL Central. But then he lost game 2 to the Houston Astros when the Astros just took the White Sox to the woodshed. So I'm going to say advantage Nationals. So let's just hope this series is not advantage Nationals. It's like I said, the White Sox are about to embark on a very tough stretch of schedule, and you just don't want to see the good times end. Because right now, again, the Sox are 9-7 over the last 16 games. And outside of like Sunday's loss to the Guardians, they haven't looked, historically bad. They really have only looked terrible in that game. And I would want to say that Tampa, those two games they lost to Tampa Bay, especially Mike Clevenger's first start. But otherwise, Sox have been playing some good baseball. And, that's all you can ask for right now in this lost season. Just don't look embarrassing. Don't look terrible, historically terrible, like you did in that 3-22 start. Because I'm going to keep harping on it. There is no consolation prize for being historically bad. The Sox are ineligible for the number 1 overall pick. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Before I go, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. And we'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll try to recap the doubleheader. And hey, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page at Locked On White Sox. Smash the like button and give a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. And let me know your thoughts on today's topics regarding who can get back to being competitive faster, the Nationals or the White Sox. You can leave them at Twitter. You can leave them on Twitter at ToddJDub. You can also email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.